Ready? All right, welcome. Hey, we're coming to you live from the Monsoons of Flint here in Flint Talk Radio Studios. This is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Thanks for joining me. I'm flying solo today. Tope Step's at home, manning the floodwaters, so we wish him the best of luck. Hope he gets, out of the flood. Start calling him Noah. Hey, we got some medical marijuana news I want to share with you today. Let you know what's happening down at the Genesee County Compassion Club and whatever else you feel like talking about. John, what's going on back there in the studio?
Well, let's see. We got a little bit of water coming in, but years ago we took care of the major problem. Otherwise, we'd be sitting in the middle of a swamp.
Yeah, we'd have to have little inflatables.
You'd be there sitting on a rubber raft.
Right.
Yeah, it was pretty bad at one time. But we got one of the friends of the studio, one of the people at the studio, his brother redid the thing, carved out a path for the water to go to, and put a tub in there so the water goes in there and it gets pumped
Clearly.
out.
Oh, yeah.
Sub pump. I never thought I was going to have a sub pump living in the city, but I guess maybe it's a kind of a status, because that's a suburban thing,
This is a mansion.
Yeah,
Mansion.
no, it's like maybe increase the property value or somehow, We got a sub pump like you guys in the burbs do.
If nothing else, it keeps you dry. That's nice.
That's good. Yeah, otherwise it would be a swamp in there. It really would.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it. It's been bad. We've had a lot of rain, and it's still coming down, so bundle up your basements and, whatever. Be careful. But, hey, we had the soup kitchen here last week at the North End Soup Kitchen. Thank you very much to Mr. Matt, who did the frying down there, who served fish. Had over 100 people come in and get fed. And we had the apple cobbler, or peach cobbler, excuse me, all the good stuff. So thank you to all the volunteers that came down there and helped out. And we'll be looking forward to our next one coming up here in June. It's the first Friday in June. And we could use your help. But thanks for everybody. And let's see, what else we got going on? We've got our mass specometry testing going on down there at the G3C. I think that's going to be actually open, running, operational here very shortly. We got our last few remaining pieces of the puzzle, and we're waiting for our tech to come in and shore everything up. But I bet probably by next week maybe, might be ready to roll on that.
That person was going to be there on a consistent basis, right, to do the testing?
Well, we have a lab certified person that'll be doing our testing. That's actually Sean. He's going to be rocking it back there, the testing equipment. And we've had a factory person come in as well and help train and calibrate.
So another thing is, too, this is also good for other plants, too,
you
right?
can test anything,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
It's not built for cannabis, that's for sure. But we use the right specs and all that, and we have to get in the particulars and make sure they're all calibrated accordingly and stuff like that. So
No, that's and you actually have to have what's the size of the sample usually required for good testing?
for flowers, you need about a gram sample, and for concentrates, a half gram. So it will use up your sample in the process of the testing, so you won't get it back. But it doesn't require too much, so just a small amount. And it'll be able to test for cannabinoids and then pathogens and also terpenes. So this is going to be cool.
And terpenes are actually that's where they get the word turpentine from, is it, or?
I don't know about turpentine.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's kind of a flammables, isn't it?
I'm not a scientist, John. All I know is
I looked it up last time we talked. Talked about and it said it's the flammable portion, of a chemical. It's a flammable,
Gotcha.
chemical. Yeah.
Well, so in layman's terms, it's the thing that gives the whatever it is you have in front of you. It gives you the smell. So that's where the smell comes from. That's where the flavonoids come from. That's the core of it. So as far as the burnable part, we thought all of it was burnable, John.
This is what it says. Usually, it's terpenes are actually connected. I think they originally isolated them or used that for conifers. Pine trees. I know if you burn pine trees in your fireplaces, there's a big potential for creosote and terpene, that kind of stuff, which is a flammable to adhere to the chimney itself and cause a to catch on fire.
Yeah, chimney fire.
Right. So that's terpenes. You want a low amount of them, don't you? Or
Well, in this application here, we're not really worried about it sticking to our chimneys.
Right.
No, the terpenes in this case are what's going to give it the flavor and the smell. So in a sense, you want more of the terpenes. It's just going to be a matter of which terpenes it's going to contain. That'll determine the aroma of it and the experience that's going along with it. If you were to look up some of those terpenes, the individual profiles on them, you'll see that they're used for aromatic type treatments. They can have a lot of different medical therapeutic effects that are good for you. And a lot of times you'll get those types of things like in your bath salts or in your herbs and spices that are sold at like homeopathy stores and whatnot. But this here would be used in conjunction.
Because I mean, it's just amazing. Because when I was a teenager growing up, everybody grew weed or smoked weed. I never really I kind of ignored the chemistry behind it. And now as I gotten older and less hostile to the idea of it, pretty much come on board for. I've seen that there's so much chemistry behind. Of course, I don't think the people I was around was aware of all this stuff either. But.
Oh yeah, I don't think back in the '70s they were having conversations about terpenes. But yeah, you're right. I mean, terpenes here. Reading to you from Wikipedia. These are they're large, diverse class of organic compounds produced by a variety of plants, including conifers, which you were talking about, pine trees. Says here that often strong smelling and may protect plants that produce them by deterring parasites. And terpenes are aromatic hydrocarbons and thus may have a protective function. The difference between terpenes and terpenoids is that terpenes are hydrocarbons, whereas terpenoids contain additional function. So it says it's a major component of resin and of turpentine, which is produced from resin. So there you go.
It's pretty much the same thing from the sound of it. It's pretty much the same article that I was looking at. So
yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty cool. It says here also they're a primary constituent of essential oils of many of the types of plants and flowers. And of course, essential oils are used widely as a natural flavor additive for food, fragrances for perfume, and in traditional and alternative medicines such as aromatherapy. So that's what we're getting into. And I think that's one of the big reasons you'll see a lot of people have preferences towards certain strains is that the terpenes are what they're finding the relief. And I think there's also a medicinal application that should be looked at in the combination between the cannabinoids being used and also the terpenes. So you might get sort of a double whammy effect, if you will. Like say, for instance, you have an indica, which makes you relax, is going to give you a calm sensation. And then you have a terpene that's going to be sort of paired with that. And it would actually increase the effect of the cannabinoids that person is experiencing. So
now, okay, all plants usually, through a lot of plants they get fertilized through pollen. Obviously, marijuana is the same thing.
true.
So okay, so you got one. That's the reason why. That's the reason why when you're doing one strain, you have to isolate and keep it isolated from the other strains, so there isn't this cross pollination. Unless you want to, you're
That's why
experimenting.
we got to separate the boys from the girls.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, so the female plant usually has more of the things you're striving for.
Well,
the
I mean,
attributes.
that essentially is what we're striving for, is the female plant, because that's where it produces the bud or the flowers that are consumed. And a male plant, while it does produce flowers, they're a different type of flower, and it's one that when it opens up, it'll emit that pollen that you're talking about. So those aren't what people smoke. I mean, if you were back in the 70s, you probably had a mixture of plants, but the majority of what that probably was feminized, not feminized, excuse me, pollinated female plants. So you had buds mixed with a bunch of seed inside of it, and that's because that plant had been sexed back when it was younger or mingled with males.
So the pollen actually, if the pollen of one plant, a male of one plant, is like on the female plant,
Yes.
some of that's genetic material is now encompassed in the offspring or the
seed.
the seed.
Yep.
Okay, so because I mean I know that I know like certain animals, salamanders for example come to mind. They can actually a female and the male get together, but the male's DNA basically is not even a contributing factor. His sperm just serves to complete the process of fertilization. None of his genetic attributes are passed on.
I see.
Yeah, and some salamanders. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, actually, this was with cannabis. It's more the natural, or I guess not natural, but more the common way of reproduction, where it's going to contain DNA from both the male and the female. So the offspring, that seed, is going to be a combo of the male plant that pollinated it and the female plant that was receiving the pollen. So I mean that's how we get new strains. I mean I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
But is it now how many generations would it take to breed back to you got a cross and now you got to want to go back to the original stock? How many generations, or you basically? Well, that's actually the seed. So basically, you jettison those seeds and go to a pure source, right?
You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, because once you pollinate it or cross-pollinated it, that offspring is always going to have a remaining factor of the original parent lineage, which is going to ultimately contain two different strains.
And so basically, are there some strains that come out of that some offspring of that come like if they're sterile because they're just sterile?
We certainly are going to have sterile seeds. I don't know if you had two strains that won't match up. I've never heard of that before. I've heard of stories where you have males and females that are being pollinated and some take better than others as far as trying to produce that next set of generation, that new seed crop. However, I don't know if there's like you cannot combine Candy Kush with the OG. I have no idea. I don't think that's the case because we see so many different combinations now available, and oftentimes these are combos of combos, or down lineage of the parental line there. So really, I think the possibilities of the combinations are endless. You can have so many different crosses and varieties of strains, and that's what is going to end up producing those different types of terpenes and also different types of cannabinoid profiles, which ultimately now we'll be able to determine what works best for patients, and we can get feedback, find out what's going to help them out, and what it is they're actually seeking, rather than just a strain name. So that's pretty cool. All right, I got some other stuff I want to share with you. There was, speaking of production and so on, there's been some action with Health Canada's medical marijuana program. They've had change to the system. We've talked about that in previous episodes. Now they've got basically these companies that are applying to be licensed producers for Health Canada. There's 12 different corporations now that have received licenses and are producing, and a number of those have already got their product out to market. So they have patients out there receiving this product. These patients used to be able to produce it themselves or get it from a caregiver, and now the Health Canada is doing away with that program, or at least trying to. The case is that there is a case actually in court of whether or not patients should still be able to produce their own. However, the folks that are moving on from that, not really trying to fight the battle, they've already signed up with these different corporate partners through Health Canada. And the interesting thing here is that there's already been a couple recalls on their products. One of the producers that, in fact, we talked about this before, I think it was Peace Naturals, they had shipped out a couple different strains. One of them was called Natural Kush, I believe, and this strain had to be recalled. Now, we were kind of joking about this a couple weeks ago, if you remember, and they kind of wondering, what's wrong with it, because they didn't put out in their recall the reason for the recall. They just said, hey, we have some didn't meet standard type product out there, and you just send this back. Now they're saying that it wasn't dangerous, it wasn't because of any harmful type of bacteria. They're saying the reason it was recalled was because it had too much moisture. So it kind of sounds to me like these guys up there at Peace Naturals weren't quite ready to ship out their product. Maybe their drying facility wasn't set up properly or wasn't working as well as they thought. And once they had shipped out their product to patients, they found out that they're too much water in the weed and had to let it dry it out.
They sold that weed before its time. No.
Yeah, and it is a tricky process of properly drying and then curing your cannabis. And it doesn't sound to me like the company here, Peace Naturals, is bothering to curing at all, because you can't start the curing process until the cannabis has already been dried properly. So it sounds to me like they still working out some bugs there.
I thought curing was actually drying.
No, it's actually two different things. Drying is just simply letting the moisture evaporate out of the weed after it's been cut down. When it's originally cut, about 70% of that material there is water. So you've got a fresh bud, you just chopped it off the vine, and now you've trimmed up all your fan leaves. You've got this remaining flower sitting there. Well, 70% of what you see there is simply water, and it takes a while for it to dry out. It can be a week, 2, maybe 3 weeks at the most, typically, that you need for that to occur naturally. And of course, if you're putting it into a heated atmosphere, you're going to degrade your CBDs or your CBNs, or all your different types of cannabinoids are going to be degraded through heat. So that's not the proper way to do it. You want to let it occur naturally, in a nice temperate environment, climate controlled, so you don't have too much moisture in there or humidity. And again, this process takes anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks, just depending upon your conditions. It sounds to me like they had it in their vault, as they say, for several weeks, and it says here that it became damper than agreed upon. So we're not sure what their standard is. It sounds to me like they actually don't have a standard for the moisture content of their cannabis. I can tell you that we had, through our past testing groups there at the club, when Kyle was back there working on his machine, the average was about 10%, and that seemed to be the desired amount of moisture left in there. He didn't want it completely dry because it crumbled up like dust, and anything more than 10% just became too damp to be enjoyable, and then beyond that point it just doesn't even burn. But the curing process is something that's should be totally separate and occur after the drying is completed. And a lot of people don't understand that. Curing is a natural way of the anaerobic bacteria that will occur in the lack of oxygen. So you have to have a sealed container to do your curing in, and in order to do that, you want to make sure your moisture is gone, because if you have too much moisture and you've sealed up your cannabis and you're now starting your curing process, you're going to have mold and other things like that occur, and of course that's not desirable. But if you look at this article here, this is from leafscience.com. They're talking about this K Farms. This is the name of the batch, Kush Farms, I guess, from Peace Naturals. Again, the company that put it out there. They're just drying it in a vault and then simply shipping it out. It says here it was sitting in the vault for 8 weeks. So I guess that's, to a person who's been growing cannabis now for a few years under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Program, I can tell you I don't really think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you have cannabis that takes 8 weeks to dry out, it's probably moldy at that point. I mean, if you've had moisture sitting around too high too long, you will have mold occur. But they are saying that it did not occur, or that it didn't have any bacteria in it. Canada's standard, just so you know, is 0. They cannot have all these licensed producers, when they ship out their weed, they cannot have any type of bacteria or mold present in their product. It has to be tested, and it has to be 0. So I don't know. I mean, this is kind of funny. You think of these companies that are putting out this product as being big corporate companies stepping in and squashing the little guy. And I've actually done a little bit of research. A few of these companies that have been approved through Health Canada are little guys. They're just, in fact, one we're going to talk about here is a father-son duo. So they're not all big companies. I know that one of the companies that had a recall was from the company that purchased the old Hershey's factory up in Ontario. So obviously a little bit bigger operation there than some of the other ones. But there is a variance. That's kind of interesting. I mean, you kind of get this idea in your head that it's all big grow operations, and that's not necessarily the case. But certainly, no matter what it is, I mean, Peace Naturals being one of the larger ones, they still have a little problem working things out. I mean, I think that some of the caregivers in Michigan have probably put their product to shame. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, because here's the politicians' reasoning is they're afraid of, the local small providers of this stuff not having enough care or concern about the quality, and that's going to be detrimental to the health of the end user, the patient. And this is one of those approved places.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, I mean, this goes to show you that I think just basically, I'm going to say this, it's on me, but basically, if you just pay them enough money, they're willing to overlook a lot of sin or a lot of problems, because, you pay them efficiently.
You got a point. I mean, but however, it is the second recall. There's been another one as well that was put out there, and they're saying here that they don't have, that they did have bacteria test positive in their testing, and so that's why it's being recalled. But it's kind of interesting, the statement I was reading here. This is from Peace Naturals, that they had recalled. They didn't say what it was, but it was not meeting the protocol for the 0 bacteria of mold or fungus. So yeah,
like a pretty stiff,
not a guarantee.
It seems like a pretty stiff standard, because a lot of food products got an acceptable amount of filth that they can allow into it, by the FDA's ruling.
Mm-hmm.
On this you can have so many parts per million on fecal matter of insects or animals or mammals or hairs or whatever.
That's for fast food, right?
Yeah, for actually for all the foods, but
Yeah.
It seems like, but there's a real scrutinization going on there for medical marijuana.
Yeah, I think to have 0 is got to be some type of a misunderstanding, because almost everything has some sort of bacteria on it, or
the surface you're like that plastic surface right in front of you. It's plastic. There's probably some bacteria on that. It's like, and the thing is, when I was a kid, I saw that, and when I was in high school, I saw a movie about that. There's bacteria in everything. And a lot of things, if we didn't have bacteria in our stomach, we wouldn't be able to break down our foods.
Right.
People don't understand that. So,
Yeah. Of course, we're hoping that this is done to protect patients. We don't want to see them coming in contact with harmful molds or bacterias, funguses, and whatnot.
Form of Legionnaire's disease or something.
But I think to have a 0 tolerance, I don't even know if that's naturally possible. In fact, I was kind of wondering, like, if they're going to have their product irradiated potentially. If they take their finished meds and have to have them irradiated so that they can somehow kill all the living bacteria, fungus that might be on there. I don't know.
Which the things, everything you do is going to have a reaction, or there's going to be some kind of. I think it might be cumulatively might have some negative effect on the health too.
I
You know,
think it does. I mean, not all bacterias are bad, like you're saying. I mean, some of them are already occurring naturally in your body. A lot of foods are a product of these things. Like we were just talking about in the curing process, allowing anaerobic bacteria to help develop the terpenes and the different types of things that can happen to increase the, I guess, the experience for medical marijuana. You want those things. So if you have zero tolerance, you're going to miss out on the good stuff too.
look, I mean, if it wasn't for molds, I mean, let's face it, we wouldn't have cheese, we wouldn't have wines.
Yeah.
Large degree, we wouldn't have a lot of breads.
Yeah.
I mean, because of yeast and stuff like that. So, I mean, so
And we're not talking about like the white fuzzy stuff that's
right. But the thing is, it's just like people hear that word, those words, bacteria, and that's a contagion. Well, it's a necessary contagion. Let's face it, this world's not a closed system. I mean, it's like, well, it is a closed system, but it's also got all that stuff introduced that keeps it perpetuating. You got to have some of this,
Yeah, I mean, it's just, the world is not a lab, you know?
As a matter of fact, they found out people whose children were born and raised in houses that are too sterile actually develop more allergies. And they can't because they come in contact with some of the outside world.
Yeah,
They don't. Their body
built up
doesn't.
their immune system.
Right. That's why I don't clean my house. See, that's and now I've been vindicated. Yeah.
Right on. Don't wash anything. We need to increase our immunity. All right. Well, that's what I wanted to fill you in on the Health Canada program. Doesn't seem like it's all it's cracked up to be. And one more thing, I guess I do want to share with you. There was CanadaMed, one of the other companies that's involved in that. They are now putting out CBD specific strains. And I wanted to go over this because I know that we've got some caregivers in the club that do this as well. In fact, a number of you out there do. But this was, they're launching their new strain, and I think they're calling it, let me see here. Had a funny name. Let's see here. Oh, CBD plus CBD 13.1 or 113, excuse me. So this is CanadaMed. CanadaMed has put out a new strain, supposedly that they've developed. Another Canada company, the one that wanted to come into Michigan. They have developed a strain, CBD extensive strain here. It's called 113. It has 13% CBD and 1% THC. So similar to like the Charlotte's Web you guys might have heard about. I've heard some other strains out there talked about as well that have similar results. So let's see what we can do here at the club to top them. All right. So 13 CBD, 1 THC. And as soon as we get our testing up and running, we can maybe have an opportunity to show that we are better. There's another strain that they offer. It's called 9.9. This is the obvious. THC is 9%, so is CBD. So it's kind of an even split there. And then they have a few other strains as well. One is called the Peace Project. This is 8 and 8, so 8% THC, 8% CBD. So there's some results for you. All right. So we got to find out if you guys are come up with some strains and see if we can top those numbers. So and that's the company that wants to move into Michigan. So there is your competition. Now they are one of the larger companies that provides weed in the Health Canada for In Canada program. So interesting. I was looking at this other article here. You guys want to check this out. This is on leafscience.com, and they've got a grow room, tour of a grow room there from Tweed, one of the licensed producers, and it's kind of interesting. It's not real big. It's not nearly as large as you might think. It's called the Delta 9 Biotech. Delta 9. Blah, blah, blah. That's the lab. Check that out. It's a father-son duo, and they have a number of strains they're working with. Looks like they got a veg room set up, a flower room set up as well. Looks nice and clean. Nothing too fancy, but and that's in Canada. It's kind of interesting. All right. Anyways, moving on here. We've got information about NIDA. That's the government program here in the U.S. They're a National Institute on Drugs Abuse. They're the one that licensed the University of Mississippi to grow marijuana. And it looks like they've got a recent decision allowing them to cultivate up to 650 kilograms of marijuana at its research facility. Interesting. It's a drastic increase reported here over their previous cultivation quota of 21 kilograms per year. So they went from 21 kilograms to 650. That's a big boost. Apparently they need more cannabis to allow research. I don't know, it could be a good thing. I don't know. It's the government. Ooh, scary. Who knows? Says that over in 2012, $30 million in federal money split between 69 different projects was put towards marijuana research. And NIDA gave out less than $6 million to fund 22 marijuana related projects. That was in 03. So big jump there between 03 and 2012. You got $6 million in 03. In 2012, we had $30 million. So that's a pretty big boost there that the government is giving to NIDA to do medical marijuana research, and it looks like they're continuing to increase that, obviously with increasing the supply. So it doesn't mean they're giving out more. You know, they're not enlisting more patients into the NIDA program. They're putting it out there for research studies. So, and in a way, it is kind of getting out there, but in a way, I don't know. But obviously, there's a rise in interest in seeing it be decreased from Schedule 1 substance, and obviously, there's a push from some of these bigger companies like GW, so forth, out there, and I think you're going to see probably some sort of lesser classification for marijuana in the near future. But we have yet to see. So, yeah, here we go. This is what I was just talking about. Tweed's first marijuana orders are delayed, and it announced that the company announced on Thursday that they will have their plants irradiated. So, won't be any bacteria on their babies, good or bad. We're going to fry them. So, I don't know. I'd like to see what happens to the cannabinoids once the irradiation process has been completed. It might be interesting to see if there's some sort of change or if there are any effects on it or not. Who knows? All right, let's see what else we got here. If I can type. All right, get some other news from around the country. Looks like Minnesota, the Senate has a proposal for medical marijuana. They're bouncing some more stuff around there up in Minnesota. They had a different proposal available in the House, and now the Senate's got their own version. So who knows? It could be a good thing maybe between the two. They'll come up with one that they can actually agree upon. Says here also, this is from tokeofthetown.com, the ratio of alcohol bust DUIs to pot shops at the weekend checkpoint was 21-1. Interesting. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, this is news. NFL. Possibly the NFL might lighten up. They're reworking their drug policy. Looks like changes. They might have changes in the suspension of violations. Suspension violations. Who knows? It might increase the threshold for positive marijuana tests and reduce the punishments for violations involving that drug. So we'll see if there's a change there. Might be good for players. I know a lot of players have said that they'd rather have that than all the other drugs they give them. We got underground grow houses, apparently a common thing in Miami. Better watch out for sinkholes.
That's how they use one of the sinkholes.
Yeah.
Covered it up.
Put this to use. Who knows? Maybe they'll have a medical marijuana there in Florida some point soon. It's going to be on the ballot this year, so that'd be pretty cool. All right, and looks like Louisiana, they had a medical marijuana bill there, got shut down. Not going to go through, so poor folks in Louisiana will have to continue going without. And in Missouri, looks like there's a decrim bill, and it's awaiting the governor's signature. This is to lower the fines associated with marijuana possession. So, kind of cool. All right, and lastly, Connecticut voters overwhelmingly approved of medical and recreational cannabis in the latest poll. This is in Connecticut. They say they have support about nearly 90% of registered voters. That's pretty amazing.
I'd like to see how some politician can react to that and say that they can't get what they want, because who
Yeah.
was it worded right? And they don't know how to write up legislation. That's our job.
Yeah. And it says here 70% of the respondents also said they would want a dispensary in their town. That's pretty high, pretty big numbers there.
But yeah, like when Michigan was voted 64% for the current law, the law we had, and then this attorney general seems to not want to. He just isn't satisfied with what the people wanted. I mean, I don't understand that. And yet he stays in office. I mean,
Well, he's coming up for re-election here this year, so don't forget that.
the thing is, the other guy was a wimp when it comes to crime. I mean, David Layton, he's a plea deal maker. I mean, that's all he makes.
Don't badmouth our own guy.
I'm bad mouthing because it's the truth.
Well, who's running against Shooty this year?
I don't know. I'm not aware of that. Yeah. I got called out by a bunch of Republicans the other day myself because I attacked them. So, yeah. And so I mean, they want me to be on lockstep, even though I don't know why they assume that I was on board with them anyway. I never joined the party here. So I'm a libertarian. These bozos are part of the problem, in my opinion. But
I think we have a lot of viewers that would agree with you. Let's see here. Michigan State Attorney General candidates. Oops, excuse me. Mark Totten. There we go. I was trying to remember the gentleman's name. He's a Kalamazoo Democrat, works as a law professor at MSU, and he has filed paperwork to establish himself as a candidate. I believe he is running. So it is Mark Totten be your other choice. I don't know if there's a libertarian candidate for attorney general or not.
This is kind of counterproductive. We're kind of against a lot of laws, and it'd be kind of hard for us to try to be the top cop, so to speak, of the state, wouldn't it? It's
maybe a bad position for
I got to enforce the law, man. It's counterproductive.
Yeah, every answer. I don't know. We don't want to get involved.
Yeah, well, but okay, it's just your interpretation.
Right. So, but yeah, the other major candidate for attorney general this year is Mark Totten. So Totten. I would definitely check him out as an alternative to Bill Schuette. Obviously, the current attorney general has not been a big fan of medical marijuana, and I think we could probably use a new supervisor in that role. It'd be nice to see. But he is the other opposing candidate, the Democratic candidate, Mark Totten. Check him out. I think that's about it. I got Mark Schauer for Gov.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, probably not. It looks like Rick Snyder's got a real good control on advertisements.
The Democrats and liberals should like him because he's barely a Republican. I mean, in my opinion, he's beyond being a rhino. I mean, he just uses that name because he's got to have a title behind it, or in front of it,
Yeah.
a label, basically. I just don't see he's that much of a Republican.
I just can't get the picture of him scuba diving out of my face when he pops up out of the water and he's got the mask on.
Yeah, just
like we know you're a nerd, but you don't have to, accentuate it.
It's like he's went on beyond to prove that.
Yeah, he has gone out of his way to show that I am. Well, anyways, that is what it is. Elections aren't for a while. I don't really want to talk too much about elections before we have to.
To say, if we want to, we could probably see if we can get them at least do a call in. Two of these top candidates. I don't think Schuette would call into a medical marijuana show, but yeah. I think the other guy might. If we contact him, maybe we can. I know it's gonna be hard for him to come here, but if he wants to do a call in show, I'd definitely like to arrange that.
That'd be cool. Yeah, get his views and see what he has to say. So
I'll put it out to Schuette too, in case you got a Schuette supporter out there who watches the show. I mean, put that extended. I mean, I'm open for him to come in. Even if we can get both of those guys in with you,
that would be amazing.
That'd be amazing. Yeah. But I doubt it. I don't think Schuette would take us up on the offer. He thinks we're a bunch of long-haired hippies that smell like patchouli or something like that. So right. Yeah.
Put the patchouli away, John. Put it away.
Already tossed out the lava lamp, man. Okay.
Right. And you got beads around here somewhere. Beaded curtain. It's probably upstairs, isn't it?
But I do have the incense right here. I mean, somewhere.
See, there you go. You're already getting yourself immersed in culture. All right, guys. That's about it. What I have for you this week. I hope you guys try to stay dry. I know it's been crazy out there, but appreciate you joining myself and John. Thanks for being here in the studio. It's been another broadcast to you from FlintTalkRadio.com. Thanks a lot. It's the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Have a good week.